Before we get into this latest story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Quotes and Notes on James Boswell's Life of Samuel Johnson, Part 3. This is our concluding instalment of what has been a highlights package of Boswell's biography of Dr. Johnson. You'll find links to the other two parts in the description text, as well as a link to an online version of the book itself. It's well worth a read. We're starting off this time in the year 1779. We're starting off with Dr. Johnson. I would rather be attacked than unnoticed, for the worst thing you can do to an author is to be silent as to his works. An assault upon a town is a bad thing, but starving it is still worse. An assault may be unsuccessful. You may have more men killed than you kill, but if you starve the town, you are sure of victory. A version of the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. That and the idea that indifference is worse than hatred. Brandy will do soonest for a man what drinking can do for him. There are, indeed, few who are able to drink brandy. That is a power rather to be wished for than attained. And yet, as in all pleasure hope is a considerable part, I know not but fruition comes too quick by brandy. It's why I prefer to drink beers. I pass my alcohol limits too soon with spirits, often with disastrous results. He is young, my lord, looking to his lordship with an arch smile. All boys love liberty, till experience convinces them they are not so fit to govern themselves as they imagined. We are all agreed as to our own liberty. We would have as much of it as we can get, but we are not agreed as to the liberty of others, for in proportion as we take, others must lose. I believe we hardly wish that the mob should have liberty to govern us. When that was the case some time ago, no man was at liberty not to have candles in his windows. Freedom for me, restraint for others. Total freedom, of course, and as I've written about before, is an impossibility. A particular kind of manufacture fails. Those who have been used to work at it can, for some time, work at nothing else. You can meet a man begging. You charge him with idleness. He says, I am willing to labour. Will you give me work? I cannot. Why, then, you have no right to charge me with idleness. Kind of explains my current predicament. Kind of. I've no problem working if I can find the right work. Elise latus, sapiens sibi. Cheerful for others, wise for himself. You may be wise in your study in the morning and gay in company at a tavern in the evening. Every man is to take care of his own wisdom and his own virtue, without minding too much what others think. I could do better on the first part of that. Indeed, I could do better on both aspects. He, I know not why, showed upon all occasions an aversion to go to Ireland, where I proposed to him that we should make a tour. It is the last place where I should wish to travel. Should you not like to see Dublin, sir? No, sir, Dublin is only a worse capital. Is not the Giant's Causeway worth seeing? Worth seeing, yes, but not worth going to see. Yet he had a kindness for the Irish nation, and thus generously expressed himself to a gentleman from that country on the subject of a union which artful politicians have often had in view. Do not make a union with us, sir. We should unite with you only to rob you. We should have robbed the Scotch, if they had anything of which we could have robbed them. Johnson knew what a union would entail. The ambassador says well, His Excellency observes. And then he expanded and enriched the little that had been said in so strong a manner that it appeared something of consequence. This was exceedingly entertaining to the company who were present, and many a time afterwards it furnished a pleasant topic of merriment. The ambassador says well became a laughable term of applause when no mighty matter had been expressed. The opposite, in a way, to my father's understated use of very good for something that was quite noteworthy. Surely I shall not spend my whole life with my own total disapprobation. Johnson wrote this on the day of his 72nd birthday in 1780. I can relate to the sentiments. He would not allow no settled indulgence of idleness upon principle, and always repelled every attempt to urge excuses for it. A friend one day suggested that it was not wholesome to study soon after dinner. Ah, sir, don't give way to such a fancy. At one time of my life I had taken it into my head that it was not wholesome to study between breakfast and dinner. One can always find an excuse not to do something. A Frenchman must be always talking, whether he knows anything of the matter or not. An Englishman is content to say nothing when he has nothing to say. You say it best when you say nothing at all. Nilte quaesifiris extra. Stretch your arm no further than your sleeve will reach. Johnson said this to Goldsmith in relation to his modest accommodation at the time. It was said in a reassuring way. Of Dr. Goldsmith, he said, "No man was more foolish when he had not a pen in his hand, or more wise when he had." I guess this can be viewed as advice for one to stick to his area of expertise or talents. In the year 1781, aged 72. In 1781, Johnson at last completed his Lives of the Poets, of which he gives this account. "Sometime in March I finished the Lives of the Poets, which I wrote in my usual way, dilatory and hastily, unwilling to work, and working with vigour and haste. In a memorandum previous to this, he says of them, written, I hope, in such a manner as they may tend to the promotion of piety. The inspiration comes in fits and starts. Everything about his character and manners was forcible and violent. There never was any moderation. Many a day did he fast, many a year did he refrain from wine. But when he did eat, it was voraciously. When he did drink wine, it was copiously. He could practice abstinence, but not temperance. When he went at it, he went at it. One knows a character or two who fit that mould. I mentioned his scale of liquors, claret for boys, port for men, brandy for heroes. Mr. Burke. Then let me have claret. I love to be a boy, to have the careless gaiety of boyish days. Johnson. I should drink claret too, if it would give me that, but it does not. It neither makes boys men, nor men boys. You'll be drowned by it, before it has any effect upon you. Careful there, Edmund Burke. I get the sentiment, though. What one would give to go back to one's younger days. This, asking Johnson a risky question, was risking a good deal and required the boldness of a general of Irish volunteers to make the attempt. The Fighting Irish, eh? Whenever there is exaggerated praise, everybody is set against a character. They are provoked to attack it. Like when people say how amazing Columbia, or anything for that matter, is, I feel compelled to counter. Everything has its faults. A man does not love to go to a place from whence he comes out exactly as he went in. Oftentimes I wish I could leave Etienne de Bar in the same state that I entered it. Lectures were once useful, but now, when all can read and books are so numerous, lectures are unnecessary. If your attention fails and you miss a part of a lecture, it is lost. You cannot go back as you do upon a book. One may need guidance all the same. I guess that's the idea of tutorials. Do the assigned readings, then discuss them with fellow students and a tutor. I was not a little amused by observing Alan perpetually struggling to talk in the manner of Johnson, like the little frog in the fable blowing himself up to resemble the stately ox. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Many of us could do with heeding that advice more regularly. I love Blair's sermons. Though the dog is a Scotchman and a Presbyterian, and everything he should not be, I was the first to praise them. Such was my candour. The great Dr. Johnson indeed, admiring a man who was not only a Presbyterian, but a Scotsman to boot, and one whom he might like to boot. Wilkes, naming a celebrated orator. Amidst all the brilliance of, unnamed orator's, imagination, and the exuberance of his wit, there is a strange want of taste. It was observed of Appel's Venus that her flesh seemed as if she had been nourished by roses. His oratory would sometimes make one suspect that he eats potatoes and drinks whiskey. Might John Wilkes have been referring to Edmund Burke, with the potatoes and whiskey jibe a little dig at the Irish? Always, sir, set a high value on spontaneous kindness. He whose inclination prompts him to cultivate your friendship of his own accord will love you more than one whom you have been at pains to attach to you. These days, it seems too many expect to be up in the friendship deal, or that might be just my cynicism of genuine friendship after years living in Colombia. Mrs. Thrale justly and wittily accounted for such conduct by saying that Johnson's conversation was by much too strong for a person accustomed to obsequiousness and flattery. It was mustard in a young child's mouth. Johnson was certainly no yes-man. He may not always have been right, but he told it as he saw it, a characteristic that is sorely lacking amongst many in the public sphere these days. Although upon most occasions I never heard a more strenuous advocate for the advantages of wealth than Dr. Johnson, he, this day, I know not from what caprice, took the other side. I have not observed that men of very large fortunes enjoy anything extraordinary that makes happiness. A certain amount of wealth can bring happiness, i.e. enough to ensure that one isn't constantly worrying about paying for the basics. But, as has been said elsewhere, the more one makes, the more one spends, although some folk become even more parsimonious the more money they have. Johnson's charity to the poor was uniform and extensive, both from inclination and principle. He not only bestowed liberally out of his own purse, but what is more difficult as well as rare, would beg from others when he had proper objects in view. This he did judiciously as well as humanely. Mr. Philip Metcalfe tells me that when he has asked him for some money for persons in distress, and Mr. Metcalfe has offered what Johnson thought too much, he insisted on taking less, saying, "No, no, sir, we must not pamper them." Enough to help those in distress, but don't go overboard. A hand up rather than a hand out. In one of his little memorandum books is the following minute. August 9th, 3 p.m, at the age of 72, in the summer house at Streatham. My purpose is to pass 8 hours every day in some serious employment. Having prayed, I propose to employ the next 6 weeks upon the Italian language for my settled study. Keeping the mind occupied as one ages. It's important at any age, though. A man may prefer the state of the country gentleman upon the whole, and yet there may never be a moment when he is willing to make the change to quit London for it. I'm pretty sure if I had my own country estate, I wouldn't leave it to go and live in a big city. I'd visit and stay in the city for periods, for sure, but give up living in the country estate indefinitely? No. Fox never talks in private company, not from any determination not to talk, but because he has not the first motion. A man who is used to the applause of the House of Commons has no wish for that of a private company. A man accustomed to throw for £1,000, if set down to throw for sixpence, would not be at the pains to count his dice. Burke's talk is the ebullition of his mind. He does not talk from a desire of distinction, but because his mind is full. So, according to Johnson, Burke spoke out of passion, Fox only when it was likely to win him favour. The wily Fox, perhaps. A man cannot make a bad use of his money so far as regards society if he does not hoard it, for if he either spends it or lends it out, society has the benefit. It is in general better to spend money than to give it away, for industry is more promoted by spending money than by giving it away. A man who spends his money is sure he is doing good with it. He is not so sure when he gives it away. A man who spends 10,000 a year will do more good than a man who spends 2,000 and gives away 8. One does need to have a little in reserve all the same. How much is a little is very much open to interpretation, however. Sir, a man may be so much of everything that he is nothing of anything. A jack of all trades, a master of none. Or, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than master of one. A versatile factotum has his value. Yet there is a risk where you can do many things fairly well, but don't properly focus on any one of them. Nec suffere queat majoris pondora gemmae. Apologies for my Latin. Nor can it bear the weight of a greater gem. Said in reply to Boswell's comment that narrow-minded folk would be satisfied with a simple piece of jewellery rather than a great diamond. I get the metaphor, but in terms of actual materialism, I am more of a minimalist. To refer to an earlier comment of Johnson's, stretch your arm no further than your sleeve will reach. A man should pass a part of his time with the laughers, by which means anything ridiculous or particular about him might be presented to his view, and corrected. Yes, we should all be able to take a bit of mocking, within reason. Ah, Dr. Johnson, asked a Scotsman, What would you have said of Buchanan had he been an Englishman?" "Why, sir," said Johnson after a little pause, "I should not have said of Buchanan, had he been an Englishman, what I will now say of him as a Scotchman, that he was the only man of genius his country ever produced. He disapproved of parentheses, and I believe in all of his voluminous writings not half a dozen of them will be found. There lurked about him a propensity to paltry saving. One day I owned to him that I was occasionally troubled with a fit of narrowness. Why, sir, so am I, but I do not tell it. He has now and then borrowed a shilling of me, and when I asked for it again, seemed to be rather out of humour. A droll little circumstance once occurred. As if he meant to reprimand my minute exactness as a creditor, he thus addressed me: "Boswell, lend me 6pence, not to be repaid." I wouldn't have been inclined to lend him money, so... "Sir, there is no settling the point of precedency between a louse and a flea." The louse and the flea might argue the toss, though. Leave them at it. "Gravina, an Italian critic, observes that every man desires to see that of which he has read, but no man desires to read an account of what he has seen. So much does description fall short of reality. Description only excites curiosity. Seeing satisfies it." I would add that few people like to read an account of a subject they think they know well, which may be an impediment. For example, I often find it difficult to read, listen to, or watch material on Columbia. "People in general do not willingly read if they can have anything else to amuse them. There must be an external impulse, emulation or vanity or avarice. The progress which the understanding makes through a book has more pain than pleasure in it. Language is scanty and inadequate to express the nice gradations and mixtures of our feelings. No man reads a book of science from pure inclination. The books that we do read with pleasure are light compositions, which contain a quick succession of events." For sure, one often has to force oneself to read. I do anyway. Now, I do have a desire to read more, but I am easily distracted from doing so. "Clear your mind of cant. You may say, 'These are bad times. It is a melancholy thing to be reserved to such times.' You don't mind the times. You tell a man, 'I am sorry you had such bad weather the last day of your journey, and were so much wet.' You don't care 6pence whether he is wet or dry. You may talk in this manner. It is a mode of talking in society. But don't think foolishly." Quite. Even when we ask somebody how they are, most if not all of the time, we don't really care how they are. "I would rather trust my money to a man who has no hands, and so a physical impossibility to steal, than to a man of the most honest principles." In other words, you can never truly trust people. Nobody is completely virtuous. "Get as much force of mind as you can. Live within your income. Always have something saved at the end of the year. Let your imports be more than your exports, and you will never go far wrong." Nothing revelatory in this, but it's good to know he said it. In a letter to Edmund Allen, "It has pleased God this morning to deprive me of the powers of speech, and as I do not know but that it may be his further good pleasure to deprive me soon of my senses." Good old God works in mysterious ways, for sure. "As I know more of mankind, I expect less of them, and I am ready now to call a man a good man upon easier terms than I was formerly." One's expectations become lower as one ages. I guess it's happening to me, too. To Mr. Kemble, he said, "Are you, sir, one of those enthusiasts who believe yourself transformed into the very character you represent?" Upon Mr. Kemble's answering that he had never felt so strong a persuasion himself, "To be sure not, sir. The thing is impossible. And if Garrick really believed himself to be that monster, Richard III, he deserved to be hanged every time he performed it." It could be said we're always playing a character, even when we're being ourselves. Or is it just me who thinks so? "Condolences and consolations are such common and such useless things that the omission of them is no great crime, and my own diseases occupy my mind and engage my care." I tend to agree about condolences and consolations, although sometimes it is nice to know that somebody does care, even if just superficially. Another great English writer, but one of more recent vintage and who liked America, Christopher Hitchens, in his memoir Hitch 22, endorses the idea of sending condolences. In the year 1784, aged 75. There is no arguing with Johnson, for if his pistol misses fire, he knocks you down with the butt end of it. These were Goldsmith's words. Of course, this isn't to say that Johnson was always right, although he often was. He was just difficult to argue against. Sir, he, Mr. Langton, bought me a sheet of paper on which he had written down several texts of Scripture recommending Christian charity. And when I questioned him what occasion had given for such an animadversion, all that he could say amounted to this, that I sometimes contradicted people in conversation. Now what harm does it do to any man to be contradicted? I suppose he meant the manner of doing it, roughly and harshly. And who is the worse for that? It hurts people of weak nerves. I know no such weak-nerved people. Mr. Burke, to whom I related this conference, said, "It is well if when a man comes to die he has nothing heavier upon his conscience than having been a little rough in conversation." Hear, hear, Mr. Burke. I think I am like Squire Richard in the journey to London. I'm never strange in a strange place. He was truly social. He strongly censured what is much too common in England among persons of condition, maintaining an absolute silence when unknown to each other, as, for instance, when occasionally brought together in a room before the master or mistress of the house has appeared. Sir, that is being so uncivilized as not to understand the common rights of humanity. We could say, so, that Johnson was more Irish than stiff upper-lip English in this sense. The greatest profligate will be as well received as the man of the greatest virtue, and this by a very good woman, by a woman who says her prayers 3 times a day. No, no, a lady will take Jonathan Wild as readily as St. Austin, if he has 3 pence more, and what is worse, her parents will give her to him. Women have a perpetual envy of our vices. They are less vicious than we, not from choice, but because we restrict them. They are the slaves of order and fashion. Their virtue is of more consequence to us than our own, so far as concerns this world. And once they were freed, they readily embraced our vices. I've touched on many of the points Johnson raises here. See, for example, The Wages of Love, A Prostitute by Any Other Name, and Dealing with a Sexed-Up Society. You put me in mind of Dr. Barrowby, the physician, who was very fond of swine's flesh. One day, when he was eating it, he said, "I wish I was a Jew." "Why so?" said somebody. "The Jews are not allowed to eat your favourite meat." "Because," said he, "I should then have the gust of eating it with the pleasure of sinning." The hellishly good forbidden fruit. I had the resolution to ask Johnson whether he thought that the roughness of his manner had been an advantage or not, and if he would not have done more good if he had been more gentle. I proceeded to answer myself thus: "Perhaps it has been of advantage, as it has given weight to what you said. You could not, perhaps, have talked with such authority without it." No, sir, I have done more good as I am. Obscenity and impiety have always been repressed in my company. True, sir, and that is more than can be said of every bishop. Greater liberties have been taken in the presence of a bishop, though a very good man, from his being milder, and therefore not commanding such awe. Yet, sir, many people who might have been benefited by your conversation have been frightened away. A worthy friend of ours has told me that he has often been afraid to talk to you. Sir, he need not have been afraid if he had anything rational to say. If he had not, it was better he did not talk. We are who we are. I can be quite fiery, impatient, but if I wasn't, I wouldn't be me. Has my temperament been a net benefit for me? That's hard to know. And yes, we can always try to be better, where we feel it's needed. We have more respect for a man who robs boldly on the highway than for a fellow who jumps out of a ditch and knocks you down behind your back. Courage is a quality so necessary for maintaining virtue that it is always respected, even when it is associated with vice. Quite, down with those sneaky, pernicious, two-faced cowards. That God is infinitely good, as far as the perfection of his nature will allow, I certainly believe. But it is necessary for good upon the whole that individuals should be punished. As to an individual, therefore, he is not infinitely good, and as I cannot be sure that I have fulfilled the conditions on which salvation is granted, I am afraid I may be one of those who shall be damned. If Johnson has been sent to hell, then I shall certainly be there. Maybe I already am there. We passed to discourse of life, whether it was upon the whole more happy or miserable. Johnson was decidedly for the balance of misery, in confirmation of which I maintained that no man would choose to lead over again the life which he had experienced. Johnson acceded to that opinion in the strongest terms. I concur. Life is a sea of mediocrity, if not quite misery, which receives an occasional shower of joy. These freshwater rains soon match the composition of the salty sea, however. No man is a hypocrite in his pleasures, said in reply to Joshua Reynolds in relation to taking the altitude of a man's tastes. The difference, he observed, between a well-bred and an ill-bred man is this. One immediately attracts your liking, the other your aversion. You love the one till you find reason to hate him. You hate the other till you find reason to love him. I think most decent people tend to like me until I give them a reason not to. He had no taste for painting. That makes two of us. Well, I'm certainly not a painting fanatic. Later, in reply to Boswell's remark about the inferiority of painting to poetry, Johnson said, Painting, sir, can illustrate, but cannot inform. This is taking prodigious pains about a man. Oh, sir, said I, with most sincere affection, your friends would do everything for you. He paused, grew more and more agitated, till tears started into his eyes, and he exclaimed with fervent emotion, God bless you all! I was so affected that I also shed tears. After a short silence, he renewed and extended his grateful benediction. God bless you all, for Jesus Christ's sake. We both remained for some time unable to speak. He rose suddenly and quitted the room, quite melted in tenderness. Johnson's reaction on hearing that his friends had asked the government to pay for his planned trip to Italy for the coming winter. Sir, it is in the intellectual world as in the physical world. We are told by natural philosophers that a body is at rest in the place that is fit for it. They who are content to live in the country are fit for the country. Horses for courses, as the saying goes. I think I am fit for the country, or at least a country town as opposed to a sprawling metropolis. I will be conquered. I will not capitulate. I, too, wish to leave the land of the living in this way, go down fighting with vigour. It is strange, however, to think that Johnson was not free from that general weakness of being averse to execute a will, so that he delayed it from time to time. It's a task few of us seem eager to carry out, as I've written about before. Johnson, with that native fortitude, which amidst all his bodily distress and mental sufferings never forsook him, asked Dr. Brocklesby, as a man in whom he had confidence, to tell him plainly whether he could recover. Give me, said he, a direct answer. The doctor having first asked him if he could hear the whole truth, which way soever it might lead, and being answered that he could, declared that, in his opinion, he could not recover without a miracle. Then I will take no more physic, not even my opiates, for I have prayed that I may render up my soul to God unclouded. Principled and strong, right to the end. The book ends with these words said by an unnamed acquaintance of Boswell's. I can think of no better way but to also end with them. He has made a chasm, which not only nothing can fill up, but which nothing has a tendency to fill up. Johnson is dead. Let us go to the next best. There is nobody. No man can be said to put you in mind of Johnson. Have you subscribed to this channel yet? If not, why not do so right now? It's free and only takes a second. Thanks!